In this video, we drift gently back to one of history's most pivotal moments, reimagined in a calm and soothing way to help you unwind. Nightfall Over Normandy, a D-Day sleep story, invites you to experience the quiet side of that fateful day, the hush of the evening sky, the soft rhythm of distant waves, and the stillness that followed the storm. Through peaceful storytelling and a slower, more reflective pace, this journey transforms history into a tranquil landscape, allowing your mind to relax, let go, and gradually fall asleep. Tonight, we are going to travel back, far back, to a world that smelled of salt water and engine oil and the quiet terror of young men trying to sleep. We are going to spend the night with one soldier, a man like any other man on the eve of the most consequential day of his life. His name is Thomas. Private First Class Thomas Aldridge of the United States Army, 1st Infantry Division. He is 22 years old. He is from a small town in Ohio where the winters are long and the summers smell of cut grass and river mud. He has brown eyes. He has a scar on his left knee from falling off a bicycle when he was 9. He keeps a photograph of his mother tucked inside his left boot. Tonight, Thomas cannot sleep. It is the evening of June the 5th, 1944. Thomas is lying on a narrow metal bunk deep inside the belly of a transport ship called the USS Samuel Chase. The ship is anchored somewhere off the southern coast of England, and around it, stretching in every direction across the Black Channel waters, are other ships. Hundreds of ships. Nearly 5,000 ships in total, the largest armada ever assembled in the history of the world. But Thomas cannot see any of that from here. From here, there is only the low amber glow of a single overhead bulb swinging gently with the motion of the sea. There is the smell of men's sweat, boot polish, canned rations, cigarette smoke soaked into wool. There is the sound of snoring from the bunk above him, which belongs to a boy from Georgia named Curtis who seems to be able to sleep anywhere, through anything, at any time. Thomas has always envied Curtis for this. The ship groans, a long, low, metallic groan, like the sound of something very large adjusting its weight. Then it settles again into the rhythm of the water. Thomas stares at the ceiling. He has been told what tomorrow will look like. Or rather, he has been told a version of it. The military version, the clean version with arrows drawn on maps and objectives marked in red grease pencil. He has been told that the beach his unit will land on is called Omaha. He has been told that it is approximately 300 meters of sand backed by bluffs. He has been told that the preliminary naval bombardment will have destroyed most of the enemy's defensive positions before his landing craft ever touches the shore. He has been told a great many things. He is not sure how many of them he believes. He thinks about the map. He has studied it so many times in the past week that he could draw from memory the long curve of the Normandy coastline, the 5 colored sectors, the little arrows showing the direction of advance. He tries to picture it now, to make it abstract, to reduce tomorrow to something manageable and geometric. A diagram. A problem with a known solution. But the diagram keeps dissolving into something else. Something that has no arrows and no clean red lines. He thinks about the water. They have been told to expect cold water. The English Channel in June is approximately 13 degrees Celsius. They have been told this as a fact, a logistical consideration, the way you might mention the weather before a morning run. 13 degrees. Thomas has swum in cold water before. He grew up near a river, and in early spring, before the season had properly turned, he and his friends would dare each other to jump in off the old rope swing that hung from the big oak at the bend. That water had been cold. He does not think it had been 13 degrees. He pushes the thought away. The ship moves. A slow, deep roll port to starboard, starboard to port. It is actually almost soothing. If you let it be. Thomas tries to let it be. He breathes with it. As the ship tips one way, out as it tips back. In, out, in. He thinks about Ohio. He does this sometimes as a deliberate exercise, a thing the army chaplain suggested, actually, though he'd wrapped it in different language. Ground yourself in something familiar, the chaplain had said. Something that belongs to you. Thomas grounds himself on the back porch of his parents' house. He can see it very clearly. The wooden boards that need repainting, the particular pale gray they've gone from years of weather. The screen door that doesn't quite close all the way and hangs open about 2 inches if you don't give it an extra push. The sound of it in summer, swinging open and snapping shut behind him as he came in from the yard. The sound of his mother's voice from inside asking if he'd washed his hands. He grounds himself in that sound. He stays there for a while. Around him, the hold is settling into something approaching quiet. Somewhere at the far end, 2 men are still talking in low voices. He can hear the murmur but not the words, just the rhythm of it, conversational, unhurried. One of them laughs softly at something. A real laugh, genuine. It surprises Thomas every time he hears something like that here. A real laugh, a genuine moment of lightness in a place like this, on a night like this. He is grateful for it. Somehow, it means something. He's not sure what. Sergeant McAllister passes through the hold. Thomas recognizes his footsteps are heavy, even tread, unhurried. The footsteps of a man who has decided not to be afraid and has succeeded at it through sheer force of will, or at least has succeeded at looking like he succeeded. McAllister is 34 years old, which seems ancient to Thomas. He has been in North Africa. He has been in Sicily. He has a quality that Thomas has noticed in other men who have been through those things, a kind of settled heaviness, like furniture that's been bolted to the floor. McAllister stops at the foot of Thomas's bunk. "Aldridge," he says quietly. Not a question, just a statement of his presence. "Sergeant," Thomas says. A pause. The ship rolls. "Get some sleep," McAllister says. "Yes, Sergeant." McAllister moves on. His footsteps fade. Thomas looks back at the ceiling. He thinks about the weight of his kit. He has been thinking about this, in a practical way, because practical thoughts are easier than other kinds. 68 pounds. That is what he will carry onto the landing craft tomorrow morning. Rifle, ammunition, gas mask, first aid kit, rations, entrenching tool, life belt. 68 pounds. He has carried it in training. He knows the feeling of it, the way it settles onto your body, the way your shoulders accept it, and then after a while stop complaining about it. He wonders how 68 pounds feels in 13-degree water. He pushes the thought away again. The amber bulb above him continues to swing. Slowly, back and forth, back and forth. The sound of the sea is everywhere, not crashing, not violent, just present. A constant low conversation between the hull of the ship and the water it floats on. An ancient sound. A sound that has nothing to do with wars or landing craft or the 1st Infantry Division. A sound that would be here long after all of it. Thomas finds this thought oddly comforting. He breathes. In. Out. He thinks about the porch again. The gray boards. The screen door. He pushes it open, gives it that extra push at the end so it closes properly, and steps inside, into the warm kitchen smell of his mother's house. Coffee. Something baking. The particular light of a late afternoon in Ohio, golden and slanted, coming through the window over the sink. He is there. He stays there. His eyes grow heavy. The ship rolls on, steady as breathing, carrying him and 600 other young men through the dark water toward morning. He does sleep, eventually. It is not a deep sleep, and it is not a restful one, but it is sleep the kind that takes you under in shallow pools, that gives you 20 minutes and then releases you again into the dark. He surfaces and sinks, like something adrift on the water. At some point he dreams about the river back home, about standing on the bank in the early morning with a fishing line in the water and nothing moving anywhere, and the sky going from black to gray to the palest imaginable blue. He is still there, still standing on that bank, still watching that sky, when someone shakes his shoulder. Aldridge. Up. It is Corporal Davis. His face is a pale oval in the half-dark of the hold. He looks like he hasn't slept at all, which is probably the truth. "What time is it?" Thomas says. Not really a question. 2:15. Thomas sits up. The hold is already moving. Men are rising from bunks in the dark. The sounds of it all around, the clink of buckles, the rustle of canvas straps, boots finding the floor. Nobody is talking much. There is a particular quality to the silence of men preparing for something they cannot entirely comprehend. It is not the silence of calm. It is not the silence of fear. Exactly. It is something in between a suspended silence, the silence of a breath held. Thomas swings his legs over the side of the bunk and sits for a moment with his feet on the cold metal floor. He looks at his hands. He has always had steady hands. This is something he knows about himself, a small private fact. In training, when other men's hands shook loading their rifles in the dark, his didn't. He looks at them now in the amber light. Steady. He takes that as something. He reaches into his boot and checks that the photograph is still there. It is. He doesn't take it out. He just touches the edge of it with one finger, the soft, worn edge of the paper, and then pulls his boot on over it. They file up through the ship in long, quiet columns. Thomas follows the man in front of him, a solidly built kid from Pennsylvania named WWII, who carries himself with a kind of stolid, plodding reliability that Thomas has always found reassuring. WWII doesn't talk much. WWII eats everything on his tray and cleans his rifle without being told and sleeps 8 hours wherever he finds himself. Thomas thinks WWII might be the most psychologically well-prepared man in the entire United States Army, and that WWII almost certainly doesn't know this. Up through the narrow corridors, up the metal stairs, one hand on the railing, the ship tilting very slightly with each step, the smell changing as they rise, the closed, human smell of the hold giving way to something sharper, saltier, the smell of open water coming in through the seams of the ship. They emerge onto the deck. The night is extraordinary. Thomas stops for a moment, just long enough to take it in before the man behind him nudges him forward and he starts moving again. But in that moment he sees it all. The sky above is enormous and absolutely black, dusted with stars so thick and bright they seem unreal, the kind of sky you forget is possible when you've been living in cities or in the artificial light of military camps. And below that sky, stretching in every direction across the dark water, are the lights of the fleet. Thousands of them. Running lights, signal lights, the faint shapes of destroyers and cruisers and transport ships and minesweepers and landing craft. All of it just visible in the darkness, not clearly, not in detail, but enough. Enough to understand the scale of the thing. Thomas has never seen anything like it. He suspects he never will again. For one moment, standing on the deck of the USS Samuel Chase in the early hours of June the 6th, 1944, he forgets to be afraid. He is simply a young man standing under a spectacular sky, looking out at something that will never exist again in the world. Then Sergeant McAllister says, "Move it, Aldridge," and he moves. They are led to a briefing area near the bow of the ship, a covered section of deck where a large map has been pinned to a board and a single electric lamp burns against the darkness. The officers are already there. Lieutenant Kavanaugh, who is 26 years old and from Boston and has the distracted, slightly puzzled expression of a man who went to college to study literature and somehow ended up in command of an infantry platoon. Captain Morrison, who is not distracted and not puzzled and stands with his hands clasped behind his back looking at the map the way you look at a problem you have already decided how to solve. Thomas has great confidence in Captain Morrison. The men gather in a loose half circle. Nobody sits. They stand in the dark with their weapons and their 68 pounds of kit, and they look at the map, which they have all looked at before, many times, but which tonight looks different. Tonight it is not a training aid. Tonight it is a real place that actually exists, that is actually out there across the dark water, that they will actually be standing on in a matter of hours. Captain Morrison begins to speak. His voice is low and even not trying to inspire, not performing anything, just communicating information in the clearest possible way. He talks about the beach. He talks about the sectors: dog green, dog white, dog red, easy green, easy red. He points to the map with a short wooden stick, touching each sector in turn. He talks about the tidal conditions, about the timing of the waves, about the underwater obstacles that the German engineers have installed: iron stakes, concrete blocks, wooden ramps designed to tear the bottoms out of landing craft at high tide. He talks about the provisional schedule. H-hour for their sector is 0630. The naval bombardment will begin at 0550. The first wave will touch shore at 0630. Thomas's unit is in the second wave. He listens to all of this very carefully. He has heard most of it before, but he listens as if he hasn't, because out here, in the dark, with the fleet around them and the coast of France somewhere ahead, it has acquired a weight that it lacked in the briefing rooms of England. Every detail matters now. Every detail is real. Captain Morrison pauses. He looks out at the men just for a moment, a brief sweep of the assembled faces. "I won't tell you it'll be easy," he says. "You wouldn't believe me if I did." Nobody says anything. "What I'll tell you is this. The men on that beach tonight, the Germans, they don't know what's coming. Not the scale of it. They know something is coming, eventually. But they don't know it's tonight, and they don't know it's 5,000 ships." He glances at the map. "We have surprise. We have numbers. We have air support and naval support, and we have been trained for this longer than most of you have been shaving." A few quiet sounds, not quite laughs. Something softer than that. "Do your job," Morrison says. "Look after the man next to you. Move forward." He steps back. The briefing is over. Thomas stands in the dark after the men begin to disperse, looking at the map for a moment longer. He looks at the sector marked Easy Red, which is where his unit will land. He looks at the bluffs drawn above the beach line, long, steep marks, the cartographer's shorthand for terrain that will be hard to cross. He looks at the water between here and there. He breathes. The stars are still overhead. The fleet is still all around him. The cold salt air comes off the channel in long, slow waves, and he stands in it and breathes it and thinks about absolutely nothing for a moment. Just the air, just the breathing, just the stars and the dark water and the shape of the world as it is, right now, before anything else happens. It is, he thinks, very beautiful. He pulls his jacket tighter. He checks the laces on his boots. He turns and walks back toward the hold. Below decks, men are eating what might be their last proper meal, or trying to. The army has provided eggs and toast and canned fruit, which under other circumstances would be considered a good breakfast. Some men eat everything in front of them with the focused efficiency of men who know their bodies will need it. Others sit with full trays and stare at the middle distance and don't touch anything. Thomas eats. He eats slowly, methodically, without tasting very much. He chews and swallows and stares at the tabletop and listens to the sounds of the ship around him. The engines, the water, the low murmur of 200 men processing the same impossible morning in 200 different ways. Somewhere to his left, a man is praying quietly, just a murmur of words, barely audible, his head bowed over his tray. Thomas doesn't know if he believes in the same things that man believes in. He's not sure what he believes in, exactly, but he finds he doesn't mind the sound of it. He finds it is, like the laugh he heard earlier, like the stars outside, like the steady, reliable shape of Wojciech's back moving through the dark, something to hold on to. He finishes his eggs. He sits quietly, hands around his tin mug of coffee, and lets the ship carry him forward. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the order comes down to load the landing craft. Thomas hears it passed along the hold in low voices. Boat teams prepare to embark, and the hold, which had settled into a kind of exhausted quiet, comes back to life again. Men stand. Men check things for the last time. Straps tightened. Rifles checked. Helmets seated properly on heads. The small, private rituals of men who have run out of time to do anything else. Thomas checks his life belt. It is a rubber tube that wraps around his chest and inflates, theoretically, if he pulls the cord. He has tested it twice in training. It worked both times. He finds this faintly reassuring and tries not to think about the weight of 68 pounds of kit and what that weight would do in the water of the channel regardless of any life belt. He gets in line. Loading into a landing craft from a transport ship in the dark, in open water, is not a simple thing. The landing craft, an LCVP, a Higgins boat, 36 feet long, built of plywood and steel, hangs on davits off the side of the ship, swinging in the darkness. The men must climb down the side of the transport ship using rope cargo nets, thick knotted rope, the rungs slick with spray, hanging vertically down the hull of the ship, and drop into the landing craft below. The landing craft is moving. The ship is moving. The sea is moving. None of them are moving in exactly the same direction or at exactly the same time. Thomas gets to the cargo net and looks down. The net drops away below him into the dark. The hull of the ship beside it is immense and black and wet. At the bottom, a long way down, the landing craft rises and falls with the water, its flat bottom slapping against each swell. The men already aboard crouching low with their hands braced on the sides. He grabs the rope and climbs down. The rope is rough in his hands, rough and cold and wet. He moves carefully, one rung at a time, feeling for each foothold before he trusts his weight to it. Below him, the water and the boat. Above him, the dark hull of the ship and the boots of the man who has started climbing down behind him. The channel swells lift the landing craft up toward him and then drop it away, up and away, up and away, rhythmic as breathing, except the breathing of something enormous and indifferent. He drops the last few feet and lands hard on the floor of the craft, his knees taking the impact, someone grabbing his arm to steady him. He finds a place along the side and crouches down into it. More men drop in after him, one at a time, until the boat holds its full complement. 32 men, packed close, knees to backs, rifles between legs, helmets low. The smell is immediate and overwhelming. Salt water, rubber, oil, the particular cold sweat of men who are frightened and cold and trying not to show either. The engine starts. The Higgins boat moves away from the side of the transport ship and out into the open channel, and almost immediately, the sea makes its intentions clear. The swells that had seemed manageable from the deck of the large ship are something different entirely from inside a flat-bottomed 36-foot plywood boat. The craft climbs the face of each swell slowly, laboring, its engine grinding, and then tips over the crest and drops hard into the trough on the other side. A thudding, stomach-dropping impact that sends freezing spray over the ramp and the sides and over the men crouched inside. The spray hits Thomas's face like a slap. Salt water, cold enough to take his breath for a moment. He blinks it away. Around him, he can hear the sounds of men being sick. It starts with one, the man 2 places to his left, who leans to the side and loses his breakfast quietly and without ceremony. And then it spreads, the way these things spread, not because the men are weak but because the motion is relentless and the smell of diesel and salt and vomit in the enclosed space of the boat becomes its own kind of assault. Thomas presses his lips together and focuses on a fixed point, the helmet of the man in front of him, and breathes carefully through his nose. He does not, in the end, get sick. He is not entirely sure how. They circle. This is something Thomas had not fully absorbed from the briefings, the waiting. Before they can make their run to the beach, the landing craft must circle in the dark water, going round and round in a holding pattern, waiting for the rest of the wave to assemble, waiting for the signal, waiting for H-hour. They have been in the water since approximately 4:15. H-hour is 06:30. That is more than 2 hours of circling in the channel swell in a plywood boat in the dark. Thomas had not fully absorbed this. He absorbs it now. He absorbs it one wave at a time. The slow climb, the drop, the spray, the grinding engine, the circle beginning again. He absorbs it in the cold that works its way through his jacket and his wool underlayer and settles against his skin like something deliberate. His feet are wet. He cannot remember exactly when his feet got wet. At some point the water sloshing in the bottom of the craft found its way into his boots, and now they are wet and cold and he cannot do anything about it. He focuses on his breathing. In, out. The boat climbs. The boat drops. Somewhere in the second hour, the sky begins to change. It happens slowly, So slowly that at first Thomas isn't sure it's happening at all, thinks maybe he is imagining it, his mind constructing a dawn out of pure hope. But no, it is real. The absolute black of the eastern sky is softening, very gradually, from black to something that is not quite black, a deep, heavy blue, the color of something between night and morning that doesn't have a proper name. He watches it. He has nothing else to do, nowhere else to be, and so he watches the sky lighten above the dark water, watches the horizon begin to separate itself from the sky, first as a feeling, a sense of where the edge of the world is, and then as an actual visible line, thin as a pencil mark, wavering in the swell. It is, he thinks, the slowest dawn he has ever watched. He has watched dawns before, summers on the river, early mornings before the heat came in, the sky going through its colors above the tree line. He has always liked dawns. There is something about them that feels like a promise of an uncomplicated kind, not a promise of anything specific, just the basic, reliable promise that the dark ends. That morning comes, that it always has and presumably always will. He watches this dawn very carefully. He tries to believe in it. At approximately 5:40 in the morning, the world behind them, the world behind and to the north, the world of the fleet, explodes. There's no other word for it. The naval bombardment begins. Thomas has been told about this. He has been told that the USS Texas, the USS Arkansas, the British cruisers and destroyers, that all of them will open fire on the German positions on the bluffs above Omaha Beach before the first wave touches down. He has been told this is a good thing. He knows, intellectually, that it is a good thing. What he has not been told, what could not really be conveyed in a briefing room in England, is what it sounds like and looks like and feels like from inside a small boat on the water. It sounds like the sky tearing. It sounds like a series of enormous, flat concussive slaps, not bangs, not explosions in the movie sense, but something lower and more physical than that, something you feel in your chest and your teeth and the fluid behind your eyes. The muzzle flashes light up the entire horizon, over and over, brilliant white-yellow blooms that last half a second and then vanish and then come again. The shells pass overhead. Thomas can actually hear them passing, a deep freight train rush of displaced air, and then somewhere in the gray distance ahead, in the direction of the coast that is not yet visible, there are the secondary sounds of impact. Lower, more distant, a continuous rolling thunder. The man next to Thomas, a quiet, studious-looking boy named Farrell who is from somewhere in Connecticut and keeps a small leather-bound notebook in his breast pocket, says nothing. He simply looks at the horizon where the guns are firing and his lips move very slightly, without sound. Thomas puts a hand briefly on Farrell's shoulder. Farrell nods, once. Neither of them says anything. The sky is lighter now. Pale gray, the color of old pewter, the color of the channel water around them. Enough light to see the other landing craft in the water nearby. Dark shapes rising and falling in the swell, each one carrying its 32 men in their own cold silence toward the same place. Thomas looks at the coast ahead. He can see it now. A low, dark line on the horizon. Barely there, barely distinguishable from the water in front of it and the sky above it, but there. France. Normandy. The beach they have been told about and studied and trained for and tried to sleep through the night before. The engine of the Higgins boat changes pitch, higher, more urgent. They are no longer circling. They are moving. They are moving now. The engine of the Higgins boat pushes them forward through the grey water, and the coast of France, that low dark line on the horizon, grows slowly, steadily larger. Thomas watches it the way you watch something you have been told to expect but cannot quite believe in until you see it. He has been thinking about this beach for months. He has studied photographs of it, maps of it, scale models of it built on tabletops in English briefing rooms. He has crawled across training beaches in the dark, has practiced fire and movement drills on British shingle until his knees were raw. And now it is there. Just there. Real. A strip of gray sand below low gray cliffs below a gray sky, growing incrementally larger with every minute, every wave. He watches it come. The bombardment is still going. Has been going without pause for nearly 40 minutes now. The naval guns behind them, the shells overhead, the impacts somewhere in the smoke and murk above the beach. The sound of it has become, through sheer repetition, almost a kind of background. Not normal, nothing about it is normal, but familiar enough now that Thomas's body has partially stopped reacting to each individual concussion and simply lives inside the overall roar of it. Partially, not entirely. There are moments when a particularly large caliber gun fires somewhere close, when the pressure wave moves through the air and through the water and through the hull of the boat and through his chest, when his body responds before his mind can intervene. A flinch, an involuntary tightening. The ancient, animal part of him that has not been to any briefings and has not studied any maps and simply knows, with complete and wordless certainty, that this sound means danger. He breathes through it. He has gotten quite good at breathing through things. To his left, maybe 200 meters through the water, another Higgins boat is keeping pace with theirs. He can see the silhouettes of men inside it, helmets just visible above the steel ramp at the bow, the pale ovals of faces turned toward the beach. They look, from this distance, exactly like Thomas feels. Small, determined, moving toward something very large. He thinks about all the boats, all 5,000 ships, all the men in all the boats right now, all across this stretch of coast from Utah Beach to the west, all the way east to the British and Canadian beaches at Gold and Juno and Sword. He has been told the numbers: 150,000 men going ashore today, nearly 13,000 aircraft overhead, nearly 700 warships. He has heard these numbers many times. He has never been able to make them feel real. Looking at the boat 200 meters to his left, with its cargo of men he will never meet, crossing toward the same beach for the same reason, he gets, briefly, a glimpse of the real scale of it. Not the full scale, that is beyond what any one person can hold, but a corner of it, an edge. It is humbling and terrible and strangely comforting, all at once. The beach is close enough now that he can see detail. He can see the line where the water meets the sand. He can see the sand itself, pale, wide, longer than he had quite pictured, stretching away in both directions into the early morning haze. He can see, above the sand, the bluffs, steep and green-gray, rising maybe 30 or 40 meters above the beach, their tops lost in the smoke of the bombardment. And on the beach itself, below the bluffs, he can see the obstacles. They are everywhere. Iron stakes driven into the sand at angles, pointing seaward. Log ramps propped up to catch the bottoms of landing craft. Concrete tetrahedra, 4-point steel constructions the size of small cars, half submerged in the surf. Belgian gates, large steel frames, rectangular, rusted, standing in rows across the lower beach. All of it designed with one purpose: to prevent what is happening right now from happening. To make the beach impassable. To tear apart anything that tries to cross it. The tide is coming in. Some of the obstacles are already half covered. Their coxswain, the Navy man at the rear of the boat who steers it, is picking his way between them. Thomas can feel the engine changing, speeding up and slowing, the boat angling left, then right, then straightening. He does not look at the obstacles directly. He looks at the back of the helmet in front of him and breathes. And then he hears something new. Underneath the bombardment, underneath the shells and the distant thunder of impact, there is something else. Something smaller. Something sharper and more personal. It takes him a moment to identify it. Machine gun fire. Not directed at his boat. Not yet. But somewhere to the left, somewhere along the beach, the German emplacements that were supposed to have been destroyed by the bombardment are, it becomes clear, not destroyed. They are firing. He can hear the sound distinctly, a fast, mechanical stutter, like someone tearing a very long piece of fabric very quickly. And then, a few seconds later, somewhere to the right, the same sound. The man beside him, Farrell, with his leather notebook, says very quietly, almost to himself, "They are still up there." Thomas says nothing. There is nothing to say. Something hits the water 20 meters to the right of the boat. Then another. Then another. They are not shells. They are smaller, faster. The impacts like stones thrown hard into the surface, each one sending up a brief white spurt of water that disappears almost instantly. Artillery rounds, smaller caliber, walking across the water toward them in a line and then past them. Gone. Nobody in the boat speaks. The coxswain does not change his expression or his course. Thomas stares at the ramp. The ramp is the steel plate at the front of the Higgins boat, the thing that will drop when they reach the beach, the thing that stands between them and whatever is waiting on the other side. It is about 4 feet wide and maybe 6 feet tall, painted gray, streaked with rust at the edges. Thomas has looked at this ramp for 2 hours in the dark and the dawn and now in the gray morning light. He knows every rivet in it. He knows the chain mechanism on each side that will release it when the time comes. He has thought quite a lot about what will happen when it drops. He has also thought about what happens to the men who are standing directly behind it when it drops, because the Germans know about ramps too. The Germans know that the ramp is where the men come out. The guns are aimed at where the ramp will be. He shifts his position slightly, angles himself to the left, toward the side of the boat. This is something several of the veterans had mentioned, quietly, in the days before. Don't stand in the center. Go off the side if you can. Don't be at the ramp. He is not at the ramp. The beach is very close now. He can hear the surf. Underneath all of it, underneath the guns and the engines and the machine gun fire somewhere along the shore, he can hear the surf. The ordinary, ancient sound of waves breaking on a beach. The same sound that beaches have made since before there were any people to hear them. The same sound that this particular beach made yesterday, and the day before, and will make tomorrow, and for 1,000 years after tomorrow. He breathes with it. In, out. The boat slows. He can feel the bottom coming up, the water getting shallower, the hull beginning to drag slightly in the sand. The engine protests. The coxswain opens it up, pushes them forward the last 50 meters, the last 40, the last 30. Thomas grips his rifle. His knuckles are white. He does not notice this. He looks at the helmet of the man in front of him. He thinks about the porch back home, the gray boards, the screen door, his mother's voice. He thinks, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do my job. I am going to look after the man next to me. He thinks, move forward. The boat shudders, grinds, stops. For one extraordinary moment, everything is still. The engine idles. The surf rushes against the hull. The guns behind them are still firing. The beach is right there on the other side of the ramp, 20 meters of gray water and then gray sand and then everything else. One moment. Thomas takes a breath. He takes it slowly, all the way in, holds it for just a second. Then he lets it go. The water is cold. That is the first thing. Before the noise fully registers, before his eyes have adjusted to the open air after the enclosed dark of the boat, before any of it, the cold of the water hits him like a wall. He has gone off the side, as advised, dropped over the steel rim of the Higgins boat into the channel, and the cold takes his breath in a single, total way that no amount of preparation could have made him ready for. 13 degrees. His body understands 13 degrees now. His body has very clear opinions about 13 degrees. He goes under for a moment, the weight of the kit pulling him down, the sandy bottom of the channel 2, maybe 3 feet below the surface, and then he pushes up and finds the air and starts moving. He moves toward the beach. Around him, noise. An amount of noise that is difficult to describe and that his mind, in some act of merciful self-protection, processes only partially in real time. The guns behind them, still firing. The German machine guns from the bluffs, a sound that is everywhere and directional at once, coming from above, from ahead, stuttering and continuous. The sound of the water around him as he pushes through it. The sound of other men in the water. The sound of the beach, which is a kind of roar, surf and fire and voices and things he cannot and does not try to name. He moves toward the beach. The water is chest deep, then waist deep. His boots find purchase on the sand below the surface, and he leans forward into the weight of the kit and pushes. Every step is an effort. The water grabs at him, the waves come against him, the kit pulls him down, and he pushes forward against all of it. He does not look left or right. He looks at the beach. The sand, when he reaches it, is not a relief. He has imagined, in some half-formed way, that reaching the sand would feel like something, like a transition, like arriving somewhere safer. It does not feel like that. The sand is just the next obstacle. Above it are the bluffs. Above the bluffs are the guns. The beach is 300 meters of open ground between the water and the base of the bluffs, and every meter of it is being covered. He runs, or tries to run. Running in wet boots with 68 pounds of kit on a beach under fire is not running in any clean sense of the word. It is a lurching, desperate forward movement, head down, body bent forward, each step heavy in the wet sand. But it is forward. Forward is the only direction that exists right now. Ahead of him, maybe 50 meters, there is a low bank of shingle, rounded pebbles, gray-brown, piled up by years of tide into a natural ridge maybe 3 feet high. He has seen it on the maps. He aims for it. He runs. He runs and he does not think. This is something he will remember later, the surprising blankness of it. He had expected, in those long nights of anticipation, that the beach would be a place of intense inner experience. Fear, courage, doubt, resolve, some drama of the inner life to match the drama outside. Instead, there is almost nothing. His mind has gone to a very quiet, very small place, and from that place it is issuing only the most basic instructions. Forward, down, forward. He drops once, throws himself flat as something passes very close overhead, a sound like tearing air, and is up again almost before he has consciously decided to get up. His hands are in the wet sand. His rifle is in his hands. He is moving. He reaches the shingle. He throws himself down behind a ridge of pebbles and presses himself against it, and for a moment simply breathes. The shingle is real beneath him, cold and hard and solid. The pebbles press into his chest and his forearms and his cheek, and he is grateful for every one of them. He is behind something. He is flat on the ground. He is, for this one moment, as protected as anything on this beach can be protected. He breathes. To his left, maybe 10 feet away, Wojciech is already there, flat on his belly behind the shingle, helmet down, rifle in hand. Their eyes meet. Wojciech gives a single nod. Thomas nods back. Farrell arrives a moment later, sliding in beside Thomas, breathing hard, his face white and streaming with salt water. He is still clutching his leather notebook somehow, tucked inside his jacket. Thomas notices this with a strange, distant warmth. "You're all right," Thomas says to him. Not a question. Farrell nods, swallowing. "Yes," he says. "Yes, I am." Thomas raises himself slightly and looks back at the beach. He does not look for long. A few seconds, no more. But in those seconds he takes in what the beach looks like right now, at each hour plus a few minutes, and he stores it in a part of his mind that he will not fully open again for a long time. The beach is chaos. Men are in the water, moving toward shore, some upright and pushing forward, some down. Landing craft are at various points along the shore, some ramps down, some sideways in the surf, one on fire 50 meters to the east, its hull sending up a column of black smoke that the wind takes and flattens across the sand. Equipment is everywhere: packs, rifles, helmets, the detritus of an assault meeting its resistance. The obstacles are half covered by the tide now, and the coxswains navigating in behind the first wave are working through a narrowing field of steel and wood. Further back, on the water, the fleet, the great gray shapes of destroyers, some of them dangerously close to shore now, their captains having brought them in as far as they dared to bring their guns to bear on the bluffs. The USS Frankfurt, The USS Doyle, coming in close enough that their hulls were nearly scraping bottom, firing directly at the German positions with everything they had. Thomas takes all of this in. Then he puts his face back down against the shingle and breathes. Sergeant McAllister appears from somewhere, materializes, it seems, from the chaos of the beach, moving along the shingle ridge in a low crouch, his face entirely calm, touching each man he passes on the shoulder or the helmet. Alive, alive, alive. Taking inventory with his hands, he reaches Thomas. Aldridge. Here, Sergeant. McAllister looks at him. The same direct, steady look he has always had, in the hold of the ship, in the briefing room in England, on the training grounds in Dorset. The look of a man who has decided that fear is a weather condition, something to be noted and then worked around. Can you move? McAllister says. Yes, Sergeant. Then we're going to move. McAllister looks along the ridge, counts heads with his eyes. 2 minutes. We find the draw. The draw, a narrow valley cutting up through the bluffs, marked on the maps as exit D1. The way off the beach. The way up. Thomas nods. He checks his rifle. He checks it methodically, the way he has been trained. Action, magazine, barrel. It is functional. It is wet and sandy and functional. He settles back against the shingle. He has 90 seconds. He uses them carefully. He slows his breathing down, deliberately, the way the chaplain taught him, the way he has practiced in the hold of the ship on sleepless nights. Long breath in, long breath out. He presses his palm flat against the pebbles of the shingle and feels their texture, each one individual, rounded by centuries of tide, gray and brown and pale gold. He is here. He is present. He is on this beach on this morning, and he is alive, and his rifle is functional, and McAllister is 2 meters away, and Wojcik is to his left, and Farrell is to his right. He is, in this moment, all right. He does not know about the next moment. He has learned, in the last 20 minutes, not to think about the next moment. The next moment will arrive, and he will be in it, and he will do what the moment requires. That is all. That is the whole of it. He breathes. The pebbles are cold beneath his palm. The guns go on above him. The sea goes on behind him. And somewhere above the smoke and the bluffs, somewhere beyond all of it, the sun is rising on a June morning in Normandy, pale and distant and entirely indifferent and absolutely real, and Thomas Aldridge presses his cheek against the shingle of Omaha Beach and breathes and waits and is alive. McAllister says, now. And they move. They come up off the shingle in a low, fast crouch. Thomas, Wojcik, Farrell, 6 other men from the platoon, moving in a rough line along the base of the bluffs, keeping as close to the face of the cliff as they can, using the angle of it for what little cover it provides. The machine gun fire from above cannot reach them here, not quite. The guns are positioned to cover the beach, the open sand, the killing ground between the water and the shingle, and the base of the bluff itself is a blind spot, a narrow strip of relative safety pressed against the rock. They move through it quickly. Thomas keeps his eyes on McAllister's back. 3 meters ahead, moving with that same heavy, even pace, unhurried even now, even here, as though the sergeant has simply decided that a measured pace is the correct pace regardless of circumstances. Thomas finds this maddening and deeply reassuring in equal measure. They reach the mouth of the draw. Exit D1 is a shallow valley cutting up through the bluffs, maybe 20 meters wide at the base, narrowing as it rises, the sides steep and covered in coarse grass and loose chalk. The Germans know about the draws. They have prepared for the draws. As McAllister leads them into the mouth of it, the evidence of this preparation is immediately visible. Wire. Coils of barbed wire strung across the lower section of the valley at ankle and knee and chest height, laid in rows, the kind that catches a man and holds him in the open while the guns find their range. McAllister stops. He looks at the wire. He looks at it the way he looks at everything, without apparent emotion, as a problem requiring a practical solution. Wire cutters, he says. A man named Briggs, who has been carrying the wire cutters since England, moves forward without a word and begins to work. Thomas crouches at the mouth of the drawer and watches Briggs work and listens to the battle behind him. It is strange, being still again after the movement from the shingle. Strange to crouch here at the base of the bluff and simply wait, his back to the beach, listening to what is still happening on the sand behind and below. The guns from the destroyers. The German positions above, some of them still firing, others gone silent under the weight of the naval bombardment. The sounds of men and machines and surf all mixed together into a continuous, shapeless roar. He does not look back. He has made a decision, somewhere in the last 20 minutes, not to look back unless he has to. What is behind him is behind him. What is ahead is the draw, and above the draw are the bluffs, and above the bluffs is a country that needs to be crossed. He looks up. The top of the bluff is perhaps 40 meters above him. He can see the edge of it against the pale sky, a ragged line of grass and chalk, the occasional dark shape of a fortification. Smoke drifts across it from somewhere. The morning light is fully up now, grey and flat, the sun somewhere behind the overcast doing its best. 40 meters. He has climbed steeper things in training. He breathes. Briggs cuts through the first section of wire, then the second. The work takes perhaps 4 minutes, 4 minutes that feel considerably longer, and then McAllister is moving again, stepping through the gap, and the men follow one at a time. Thomas steps through. The wire brushes the sleeve of his jacket as he passes, a faint, metallic whisper. He is careful. He has been told what happens when barbed wire catches a man's clothing and the man panics and pulls against it instead of working free carefully. He is not going to panic. He steps through slowly, both feet clear, and then he is through and moving up the draw. The climb begins. The floor of the draw is uneven. Loose rock and chalk rubble and the tough, scratchy grass of the Normandy coast, wet with the morning. The sides rise steeply on both sides, and the valley narrows as they go, so that within 50 meters they are moving in single file, each man's boots at the eye level of the man behind, the chalk crumbling slightly with each step. Thomas climbs. He falls into the rhythm of it almost immediately, the particular rhythm of climbing, which is one of the oldest rhythms the body knows. Left foot, right foot. Weight forward. Hands out for balance when needed, finding holds in the chalk face where the path steepens. Breathe. Left foot, right foot. His legs are tired. His legs have been tired since the water, the cold and the weight and the wet sand. And the climb asks more of them now, and they give it, the way legs do when there is no option. He can feel the burn in his thighs, the steadying work of his calves on the uneven ground. His pack sits heavy on his shoulders. His rifle is in his right hand. He climbs. Halfway up, the drawer opens slightly and McAllister raises a fist. Stop, and they all go still. Above them, close, perhaps 50 meters to the right and higher up the bluff face, there is a sound. A mechanical sound. Intermittent. The working of a bolt. The shift of something heavy on a mount. Nobody breathes. The sound moves. Shifts slightly to the right. Then stops. Thomas is pressed against the chalk face of the drawer, one hand flat on the cold white rock, not moving. Beside him, Wojciech is a statue, absolutely still, his broad face tilted upward, eyes tracking the sound. 10 seconds. 20. The sound does not come again. McAllister's fist opens. His hand makes a small forward gesture. They move. The chalk is white beneath Thomas's hands when he uses them, startlingly white, the white of something that has never seen the sun, bright even in the grey morning. His palms are smeared with it by the time they are 2/3 up the draw. White chalk and rust-brown earth and the green stain of the wet grass. He becomes aware, climbing, that his hands have stopped feeling the cold. They are functioning, gripping, pushing, finding holds, but the cold has gone past sensation into something else, a numbness that he notes the way you note something that will need to be addressed later, when there is a later. He climbs. The guns below are still going. They are below him now, below and behind, and from up here, halfway up the bluff, there is a strange quality to the sound of them. Flattened, removed, like hearing something from the other side of a wall, or from the bottom of a swimming pool. He can still feel them more than hear them, that deep physical concussion, working its way up through the chalk beneath his hands, but they have become, somehow, less immediate. The beach is below him. He is above the beach. This thought, small and factual as it is, does something to him. He does not examine what it does. He just keeps climbing. Near the top, the gradient eases. The last 10 meters of the draw level out slightly, the chalk giving way to rougher ground. Broken scrub, tufts of coarse grass, the chalky soil of the bluff top beginning to spread underfoot. McAllister slows. The men spread out slightly, instinctively, as the confined channel of the draw opens up. Thomas crests the top of the bluff. He stops. He cannot help it. He stops for just a moment and turns, and he looks back. Below him, spreading away to the north, is Omaha Beach. From up here it is possible to see the whole of it, the long pale crescent of sand, the dark line of the shingle, the water beyond, and beyond the water, the fleet. Still there, still firing. Hundreds of ships stretching to the horizon, their gray hulls dark against the gray sea, the flashes of their guns blinking steadily like a kind of slow, enormous heartbeat. Landing craft are still coming in. More waves, wave after wave, tiny dark shapes crossing the water and grounding on the sand and releasing their men into the surf. From up here it is almost beautiful. From up here, the thing that was chaos and noise and cold water 20 minutes ago has become something you can see all at once, something with a shape to it. A pattern. The pattern of something enormous and human and purposeful, moving forward. He looks at it for a long moment. He looks at the beach where he was, and the water where he crossed, and the ships that brought him here. Then McAllister says, quietly, Aldridge. And Thomas turns away from the beach and faces inland. Before him, the landscape of Normandy spreads out in the pale morning light. Fields, hedgerows, a farmhouse in the middle distance, its roof intact, its walls the color of old cream, smoke rising from a chimney. A dirt track running between two fields, disappearing into a line of trees. A church spire somewhere further inland, just visible above the tree line, thin against the sky. It looks, in this early light, almost peaceful. Almost like a place where nothing has happened and nothing is about to happen. A place where people have farms and go to church and smoke rises from chimneys in the morning. Thomas stands on the top of the bluff and looks at it and breathes. He is on the continent of Europe. He crossed the English Channel in a plywood boat and climbed a chalk cliff under fire, and he is standing on the top of it, and he is alive, and his rifle is in his hand, and the morning is gray and cool and real around him. He breathes it in. All of it. The salt air from the sea behind him. The green smell of the wet Norman fields ahead. The chalk dust on his hands. The weight of the kit on his shoulders, familiar and present in his. He breathes it all the way in, and lets it go. They move inland. McAllister takes them south, away from the bluff edge, into the first of the Norman fields, a broad, flat rectangle of grass, still wet with the morning, bordered on three sides by hedgerows. The hedgerows of Normandy are not like the hedgerows Thomas has seen in England. They are older, denser, built up over centuries of farming into something almost architectural. Thick earthen banks topped with trees and shrubs so interwoven that they form walls, solid walls, 4 and 5 feet high, running in every direction across the countryside like the lines of an enormous, ancient map. They move along the base of one of these walls, in the shadow of it, single file. The grass is long and wet against Thomas's boots and the bottom of his trousers. Each step makes a soft sound, a compression of wet grass, a faint release. He can hear his own breathing. The beach is behind him. He can still hear it, faintly, the guns, the distant continuous roar of it. But it is behind him and below him, and the hedgerow is between him and it, and with every step south it recedes a little further, like a sound heard through successive walls. He walks the Norman countryside in the early morning of the 6th of June, 1944, is extraordinarily green. Thomas notices this. He is not sure why it surprises him. He has spent months in England, which is also green, and Normandy is not so different in its bones, but something about the particular green of these fields, wet with dew and lit by the flat grey light of the overcast morning, strikes him as almost aggressively peaceful. The grass is very green. The leaves on the hedgerow trees are very green. Even the earthen banks of the hedgerows themselves, dark with moisture, have a greenness to them. Moss and small plants growing in every crack and hollow. He walks through it and breathes it. The smell of it is extraordinary. Wet earth, green growing things, something faintly floral underneath, some small Norman wildflower doing its work without any interest in the events of the morning. He breathes it all the way in. He holds it for a moment. He lets it go. They move for 20 minutes without incident. The platoon, what remains of the platoon, which Thomas has not yet fully counted and does not yet want to fully count, moves in a loose column through the fields, using the hedgerows for cover, pausing at each gap and crossing to check before crossing. McAllister moves with the same contained, deliberate pace. The men behind him move with the same pace. It has become, somehow, the pace of this day, this measured, forward movement, neither hurrying nor stopping, simply going on. At the edge of the third field, they find a dirt track. It runs east to west, cutting between two hedgerows, the pale chalk of the Norman soil showing through its surface in patches. Wheel ruts from some farm vehicle, old and dried and filled with last night's rain. Hoof prints, equally old. The track has been here for a very long time. It will be here for a very long time after today. McAllister crouches at the edge of it and looks both ways and then crosses, and the men follow, and they are into the next field. The farmhouse appears gradually. The way things appear when the visibility is poor and the land is divided by hedgerows, not all at once, but in sections. First the chimney, above the tree line of a hedgerow, with its thread of grey smoke rising straight up in the still morning air. Then the upper story, pale cream-coloured plaster, a dormer window, dark shutters. Then the full shape of it as they come around the corner of a hedge, a long, low Norman farmhouse, perhaps 200 years old, its walls thick and its roof of old clay tiles, a barn attached to the left side and a yard in front with a stone well and 2 apple trees, bare of blossom now but leafed out in their summer green. A dog is tied to a post near the barn. It looks at them as they come around the hedge. It does not bark. It simply looks, turning its head to follow them. A large, grey-muzzled farm dog with the patient eyes of an animal that has decided long ago that most things in the world are not worth excessive reaction. Thomas looks back at it as he passes. For a moment, just a moment, he forgets entirely where he is. They stop at the far corner of the farmhouse yard, in the shadow of the barn wall, and McAllister allows a 5-minute rest. Thomas sits down against the barn wall. The stone is cold against his back even through his jacket, but it is solid, genuinely, deeply solid, the solidity of a wall that has been standing in this yard for 200 years and will stand for 200 more, and he leans into it with something close to gratitude. He takes off his helmet and sets it on the ground beside him. The air is cool against his wet hair. He closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. The sounds around him rearrange themselves into something different when his eyes are closed. The distant guns from the coast become something almost abstract, a low, continuous vibration at the edge of perception, like the sound of a very distant storm. The immediate world is the creak of the barn in a light breeze. A bird somewhere in the apple trees. He cannot identify it. Some small French bird going about its morning regardless, singing a brief, repeated phrase. The quiet breathing of the men around him. He stays very still inside this. He lets it hold him for a moment. Farrell is sitting a few feet away, back against the same barn wall. He has taken out the leather notebook. He is writing in it, small, careful script, the pencil moving steadily across the page. Thomas watches him write and does not ask what he is writing. He knows, somehow, that it is important. That whatever Farrell is putting down in that notebook with that small, careful pencil is something that needs to exist, something being preserved against the possibility that nothing else gets preserved. After a while, Farrell stops writing. He looks at what he has written. Then he closes the notebook and puts it back inside his jacket and looks up at the gray sky above the apple trees. Do you think they know? Farrell says. Who? Thomas says. People back home. My mother. Do you think she knows yet that today is happening? Thomas thinks about this. He thinks about the newspapers, the radio broadcasts, the way news moves. He thinks about his own mother in Ohio, in the kitchen with the radio on the counter next to the flour tin. She knows something is happening, he says. By tonight she'll know more. Farrell nods slowly. He looks at the sky. She'll be frightened, he says. Yes, Thomas says. She will. A pause. The bird in the apple tree sings its short, repeated phrase. I wrote her a letter, Farrell says. Before we shipped, I didn't know what to say, so I mostly described the weather. Thomas almost smiles. That's probably the right thing. I said it had been raining, but the afternoons were nice. That's good, Thomas says. That's the right amount of information. Farrell makes a sound that is almost a laugh. Almost. McAllister says, On your feet. They stand. Thomas picks up his helmet and puts it back on and adjusts the chin strap and picks up his rifle and straightens and rolls his shoulders against the weight of the kit and is ready. The dog by the barn watches them go. The afternoon comes slowly. They move through more fields, more hedgerows, more of the quiet, ancient Norman countryside going about its green and indifferent life around them. The sounds of the beach continue to diminish with distance. Not gone. Not yet, but further. More like weather now. More like something happening in another part of the same world rather than something happening to them, personally, right now. The clouds thin slightly toward midday, and for a little while the sun makes itself known, not strongly, not warmly, but present, diffusing through the overcast and giving the fields a softer, more golden quality that Thomas finds almost unbearably lovely after the gray of the morning. The wet grass catches it and holds it. The leaves of the hedgerow trees translate it into small, moving points of light. He walks through it. His feet are still wet. His kit is still heavy. His hands are still chalk white and beginning, now that the numbness has worn off, to ache in a low, persistent way. His body is tired in a thorough way, the tiredness of someone who has been cold and wet and frightened for many hours and is now neither cold nor frightened but simply tired, deeply and completely, in every cell. He walks through the afternoon light and he is tired and alive and the fields are green around him and somewhere ahead there is a position to reach and hold before dark and he will reach it and hold it. One step at a time. Left foot. Right foot. The hedgerows pass. The fields open and close. The light moves through the clouds overhead in slow, gray waves. He walks. They reach the objective at 4:30 in the afternoon. It is a low rise of ground at the edge of a field. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that would earn a name on any map you might look at in peacetime. Just a slight elevation above the surrounding bocage, enough to provide a sight line across the fields to the south and west, enough to be worth holding through the night. McAllister walks the perimeter of it once, slowly, and then stops and looks at the ground beneath his boots the way a man looks at a bed he is about to sleep in. Here, he says. And here's where they stop. They dig in. The entrenching tool has been on Thomas's back all day, part of those 68 pounds, carried across the channel and through the water and up the chalk bluff and across the fields of Normandy, and now he unslings it and unfolds it and drives it into the Norman earth for the first time. The earth gives way easily. It is good soil here, dark, loamy, the kind of soil that has been farmed for centuries and is deep and workable. He digs with a steady rhythm, not hurrying, letting the work settle into his shoulders and his arms. The smell of the turned earth comes up around him, rich and dark and clean, one of the oldest smells there is.
He has always liked the smell of turned earth. It smells like something beginning.
He digs his foxhole to regulation depth, roughly armpit height when standing, and then he stands in it for a moment, his elbows on the rim, looking out across the field in the late afternoon light.
The field is empty, peaceful.
A crow moves across it slowly, working the turned furrows near a far hedgerow. In the middle distance, a line of poplars along a farm track catches the last of the afternoon light, their leaves going gold at the edges.
He watches the crow for a moment.
Then he climbs out of the foxhole and helps Farrell finish his. The guns from the coast have been going all day without pause. But sometime in the middle of the evening, sometime between when the light begins to go and when it finally goes entirely, they slow.
Not stop. Not all of them. But the rhythm changes.
The constant, rolling barrage of the morning and afternoon settles into something more intermittent. A gun fires, somewhere to the north.
A long pause.
Another fires, further east.
Another pause.
Then quiet, genuine quiet, lasting 5 seconds, 10 seconds, long enough to notice, long enough to breathe inside. Thomas sits on the edge of his foxhole and notices this. He tilts his head slightly, the way you do when a sound you have stopped hearing suddenly stops, and you become aware of the silence where it was.
The guns are quieting. The day is ending. McAllister comes around with rations at dusk.
Thomas eats sitting in his foxhole with his back against the earth wall and his legs stretched out before him. The rations are cold. There is no fire tonight, no fires anywhere along the perimeter, but he eats everything, methodically, without particular attention to what any of it tastes like. His body needs it and he gives it what it needs. The sky above the foxhole goes from gray to a darker gray to something that is almost purple at the edges, the particular color of the sky at the end of a long day when the clouds are breaking up and the light behind them is nearly gone. One star appears, then another. Then the clouds continue to thin and the stars multiply, slowly, the way they do. First the brightest ones asserting themselves through the remaining light, then the lesser ones emerging as the dark deepens, until the sky above the Norman field is beginning to fill with them.
Thomas eats and watches the stars come out. He thinks about the morning.
How long ago the morning was, and how close it also feels, both things true at once, the way time works on days like this, the hold of the ship, and the cargo net, and the cold water, and the sand, and the shingle,
the chalk on his hands, the dog at the farmhouse, Farrell's letter about the weather.
All of it, today.
All of it the same day. He finishes the rations. He sets the tin carefully beside him. He breathes.
Wojciech is in the foxhole to his left, 2 meters away. Thomas can hear him, a faint, familiar presence in the dark, the small sounds of another person settling into the earth for the night. At some point Wojciech says, very quietly, without preamble, "Good day." Thomas considers this. "Good day," he agrees. "Get some sleep," Wojciech says.
Thomas almost laughs. He doesn't, quite, but almost. "You too," he says.
Wojciech says nothing else. Within a few minutes, from the direction of his foxhole, there comes the slow, even sound of a man breathing in sleep. Thomas listens to it, the extraordinary, ordinary sound of a man sleeping in a field in Normandy, and finds it one of the most comforting sounds he has heard all day.
He takes off his helmet.
He sets it beside him in the foxhole, upside down, the way you do. He runs a hand through his wet, dirty hair and looks up at the sky and breathes.
The stars are fully out now.
The clouds have broken considerably since afternoon and the stars of early June are spread above the Norman field in their thousands. The same stars that were above the channel this morning when he stood on the deck of the USS Samuel Chase and felt, for one moment, something close to wonder.
The same stars.
The same sky. The world has not, apparently, stopped making beautiful things today simply because of what else was also happening. He finds this thought settling over him like something warm. He takes his blanket from his pack, damp, olive green, smelling of salt and the hold of a ship, and he wraps it around his shoulders, and he sits with his back against the good Norman earth and his eyes on the stars, and he breathes.
In, all the way in, out, all the way out. Somewhere out in the dark field, something rustles in the hedgerow.
A small animal, a mouse, a vole, some tiny Norman creature going about its night. It rustles and then is still and then rustles again further along and then is gone. The poplar trees along the farm track are barely visible now, dark vertical shapes against the slightly lighter dark of the sky, swaying very gently in the night breeze that has come up from the south. A warm breeze, relative to what the day has been. Warm enough to notice. He turns his face slightly toward it and lets it move across his skin. The sea is out there, behind him, to the north, past the bluff and the beach and all of it, and the night breeze carries just a trace of it.
Salt. The faintest salt. You would not notice it if you were not paying attention.
He is paying attention.
He breathes it in. He thinks, I am in France. The thought lands with a quiet weight. Not dramatic, not triumphant, just true. He is in France.
He crossed the channel and climbed the bluff and walked through the fields and dug a hole in the earth of Normandy, and now he is sitting in it under the stars, and the night breeze is coming up from the south, and he is alive and the day is done.
He is in France. He breathes. His eyes are heavy.
He has known they were heavy for some time, has been aware, since they stopped moving, of the tiredness working its way through him, the deep cellular exhaustion of a body that has been asked for everything and has given it. He has been holding himself upright against it the way you hold a door against wind. Not difficult, exactly, but requiring a continuous application of will.
He lets the will go. Just a little. Just enough. He settles deeper into the earth wall behind him.
The blanket holds its small warmth around his shoulders.
His helmet is beside him.
His rifle is across his knees. He will not put it down. Not entirely. Not tonight. But his grip on it loosens and his hands rest.
The stars above the field are very still. The poplar trees sway very gently.
The night breeze moves across the grass with a sound like breathing.
Thomas closes his eyes.
In the morning there will be more fields, more hedgerows, more of the long, difficult work of the weeks to come. The road from this field in Normandy to the end of this war is long, and he knows it and does not think about it tonight. Tonight there is only the foxhole, and the stars, and the good dark earth at his back, and the breathing of Wojciech sleeping in the foxhole to his left, and the distant, quieting guns, and the night.
Only the night. He breathes. In. Out.
The stars will very slowly overhead, as they always have, as they always will, indifferent and magnificent and permanent.
He sleeps.
Thomas sleeps. He sleeps in his foxhole in a field in Normandy on the night of the 6th of June, 1944, with his blanket around his shoulders and his rifle across his knees and the stars turning slowly overhead. He sleeps the way a body sleeps when it has been given no other choice, completely, heavily, without dreams, the sleep of a person who has spent everything they had and is now being replenished by the dark.
His breathing slows. In. Out. In. Out.
The night moves around him quietly. The breeze in the poplars, the small animals in the hedgerows, the occasional distant sound of a gun somewhere along the coast, fainter now, fainter with every hour. The Norman countryside holds him and the other men of his platoon in their foxholes in the field, each one sleeping or keeping watch or lying quietly with their eyes open and their thoughts their own.
They are all here.
They are all, for this night, safe.
Let yourself be still now.
If you have been following Thomas through this long day, across the water and up the bluff and through the fields to this quiet field under these quiet stars, you can rest now too. There is something worth sitting with, quietly, at the end of a day like this one.
Not the battles, not the tactics,
not the grand sweep of history, which will be written and argued over and commemorated for as long as there are people to write and argue and remember. All of that is real and important and has its place, but what is worth sitting with, quietly, tonight, is something smaller than that. It is Thomas, checking that the photograph of his mother is still in his boot. It is Curtis, asleep in the bunk above, who could sleep anywhere, through anything. It is Farrell writing in his leather notebook, small, careful script, preserving something against the possibility that nothing else gets preserved. It is Wojcik, reliable and solid, moving through every obstacle with that steady, plodding certainty. It is McAllister, moving along the shingle in the middle of the battle, touching each man with his hand.
Alive, alive, alive. These are the things worth sitting with. These small, human things.
There were 150,000 men who crossed to Normandy on the 6th of June, 1944. Each one of them had a name. Each one of them had a mother, or had had one. Had a place they came from. A town, a street, a river they'd swum in, a kitchen that smelled of something specific and beloved. Had a thing they were afraid of and a thing they were good at and a memory they went back to when they needed to go somewhere safe inside themselves. Each one of them crossed the channel in the dark and went ashore on a beach or dropped from the sky into the fields behind it, carrying everything they had, and did what the day asked of them.
Most of them came home. Some of them did not.
All of them were 22 years old, or 25, or 19, or 34, with their whole lives still ahead of them, or most of their lives, or all of the ordinary days they would ever have. And they got into the boats, and they went. We do not have to understand everything about that to be grateful for it. We only have to be still for a moment, and remember that they were people.
Just people.
Like Thomas.
Like anyone.
The night deepens over Normandy. The stars wheel overhead in their slow, ancient rotation. Orion setting toward the west, the plow turning around the North Star as it has turned every night since long before there were any people to look up and name it. The breeze in the poplars moves the leaves in their thousands, each leaf turning and catching the starlight and releasing it. In the foxholes in the field, the men of the platoon sleep on.
Thomas sleeps on. His breathing is slow and even.
His face, in sleep, has released everything it was holding through the day, the watchfulness, the effort, the contained and deliberate calm that he maintained through all of it.
In sleep he looks young. He is young.
22 years old, from Ohio, with a scar on his left knee and a photograph in his boot. He sleeps. The sea is out there, beyond the bluff, beyond the beach. In the dark hours before dawn, the channel is quiet. The great fleet that filled it yesterday is still there, the ships at anchor, the lights reflected in the black water. But the guns are nearly silent now, and the sea itself has settled, the swells long and low and unhurried. The sound of them on the beach is slow and rhythmic shushing. The sound that this coast has made every night for thousands of years. Shush. And again. Shush. The tide moves in and then moves out, and the pebbles of the shingle turn over in it, those same gray and brown and pale gold pebbles that Thomas pressed his palm against this morning, that he felt individually, each one ancient and smooth and real beneath his hand. The tide moves over them and recedes and moves over them again. This is what the sea does. This is what it has always done. The stars above the Norman field are very still. Thomas breathes. The poplars sway. Somewhere in a hedgerow, something small rustles and is quiet. The night holds everything in its dark, unhurried hands, the field and the foxholes and the sleeping men. The farmhouse with its gray-muzzled dog, the chalk bluffs above the quiet beach, the sea beyond, the fleet at anchor, the black water stretching all the way back to England, back to the shore they left yesterday morning a lifetime ago. All of it held, all of it quiet, all of it, for now, at rest. Sleep now. You have been across the channel and back. You have been in the cold water and on the sand and up the chalk cliff and through the green fields. You have sat with Thomas in his foxhole and watched the stars come out above Normandy and listened to the guns quiet down to nothing. You have carried it all the way to the end. You can let it go now. All of it. Let it go. Somewhere in Ohio, a screen door swings open in the summer evening and slaps softly shut. A woman's voice calls from inside. The river catches the last of the light. The stars come out. Sleep.